What we're going to do right now is we're going to bring in the colors, and I wanted to, we're going to bring in the colors, and then I'm going to introduce someone else that's very special with us today. So if I may, when I get you to stand, because the colors are coming in. Yeah, I think they should go. Yeah.
Color guard, hope, carry, others. Forward, arch, out, right, out, right. Color guard, hope, out, ace, freeze, and arms. Order, arms. Right, ace. Forward, arch. Railing, others.
That was the Lanier High School Junior ROTC. I want to thank you guys for coming in and doing that. I would now like to introduce Teresa Rocco Short, please. I introduced you. I thought you had something to say.
This Teresa Rocco is,
Hold it up.
Teresa Rocco is Louis Rocco's daughter. Teresa Rocco Short. But Richard Rocco, of course, was on our crew in Medevac Metal. And as a result...
Please put it up to your mouth.
No, yes, sir. I got you. But Louis was instrumental in saving 350 med lives. Myself, the other pilot, and the medic. And as a result of that, he received the Medal of Honor in 1973, I think it was, 74. 74. So tonight we're honored to have Teresa here. You know, for an honor that the 15 Med Association has so desired to have her here for. So, Teresa.
And I want to say thank you, and you are, Terry, where are you?
Here.
You want to say something?
Oh, yeah, I have, yeah. I have.
Okay.
You kind of got me.
Okay. Well,
Why don't I go ahead and do that? Okay,
you guys.
I just have some prepared remarks here. At the past two reunions, we've had visitors from other 1st Cav Division units who attended to express their appreciation to 15th Med Battalion for life-saving medevac rescue and treatment at 15th Med Battalion facilities. This year, we're turning the tables and expressing our gratitude as 15th Med Battalions to individuals from other units who have provided life-saving services to our personnel. First of all, Sergeant First Class Louis Richard Rocco. He was then a medical advisor of a MACV advisory team stationed at Katoom in northern Tay Ninh province along the Cambodian border. He was hitching a ride back to his base at Katoom on Medevac 2 on 24 May 1970. The aircraft commander was First Lieutenant Steve Monica, The co-pilot was First Lieutenant Lee Kubero. Crew chief was Spec 4 Pat Martin. The medic was Spec 5 Terry Burdett. And the door gunner was Spec 4 Gary Taylor. In flight, Medevac 2 received a call, emergency call to pick up wounded. They landed at Khartoum to drop off supplies. Instead of getting off the aircraft there, Richard Rocco offered to ride along on the mission to lend his assistance as a highly experienced medic. And his offer was gratefully accepted. As Medevac 2 was landing, Steve Modica was shot in the leg, and the aircraft crashed and caught fire. Although seriously wounded himself, Richard Rocco dragged Lee Kubero, Steve Modica, and Terry Burdett away from the burning aircraft, saving them all from certain death. Pat Martin, the crew chief, was thrown clear, and he did receive some back and shoulder wounds. And sadly, Gary Taylor could not be rescued from the burning aircraft. The story continues, and it's quite a story. The story continues with several, possibly as many as 9 medevac crews attempting the rescue of Medevac 2 until a day after the crash, and I won't go into all those details. In fact, I don't know if anybody knows all those details of those missions, and on day 2 after the crash, the crew of Medevac 2 was picked up and taken to treatment. The incident has come to be known as Medevac Meadow, and the assistance of Cobra gunships from Sea Battery, 2nd to the 20th Aerial Rocket Artillery Battalion, better known as Blue Max, were of vital importance during those 2 days of the incident. Well, after returning home from Vietnam, Lee Kubero resolved that Richard Rocco should receive the Medal of Honor for his actions that day. And Lee undertook that effort, which was about a 3 to 4 year effort to get that Medal of Honor awarded to Mr. Richard Rocco. And in 1974, he was awarded the Medal of Honor. He retired, as you know, the nation's highest valor award. He retired at the rank of CW2, sadly died in 2002. And Teresa, his daughter, is here tonight. She was hoping her mother, Carol, who was Richard's wife during the time he was in Vietnam and the time that Lee was working on getting the Medal of Honor. But she was ill and couldn't quite make it. I will let her introduce a guest who is Dwayne Jackson, who was a friend of her father's, also a veteran, and we'll do that. I did want to mention that that Lee Kubero and Pat Martin are the only surviving members of that crew at this time. And Pat Martin had a death. He was planning to be here, but he had a death in the family a few days ago and could not make it. So, Teresa, would you like to introduce Dwayne and kind of give a background on him? Or?
Sure. First, I'd like to say thank you for your service and your sacrifice, and I really appreciate you taking the time to honor my father. We're very proud of him, and we love and miss him very much. Mr. Dwayne Jackson served with him in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I was about 9 at the time, and we ended up meeting each other roughly 15 years ago as adults now, and him and his wife have been really good friends for my family ever since. I'm the Uber driver today. He's my Uber driver today.
Good.
I may recognize some of you. We all change over the years. I was Medical Service Corps. I spent 23 years in the service. I had tours in my 1 year in Vietnam. got in the Army out of ROTC, turned down an ROTC scholarship because I didn't want a 4-year commitment. Wound up staying 23, that's the way it goes. Had my year in Vietnam, I thought I was going to slide by and avoid Vietnam, but they got me. And then I went back to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I'm not an aviator, by the way. I'm not a Ranger, I'm not airborne, I'm scared of heights, so kept hearing about that. So at Fort Campbell, they'd say airborne, I'd say chairborne. Went back to Fort Campbell, didn't really want to go there, did everything I could to get out of it. Well, that's where I met my wife. So after that, we spent some time in Germany and Italy. Came back to Fort Campbell, or Fort Detrick for 5 years, and then back to the Baylor program to Fort Campbell, then back to Saudi Arabia for 3 years, and we just went back to Germany. I saw Germany from the Desert Shield, Desert Storm perspective. Very interesting. I had a great time. I love helicopter pilots. They gave me free trips in Vietnam here and there when I needed it. Only got shot at once that I know of. They took it rather calmly. I was crawling up in the fetal position in the back. But I'm glad to be here. Teresa's been a great friend. I knew her dad. Really liked him, and hated to see him when I found out he passed away. And the only reason I knew that, like Teresa, where we worked together, had a picture of her father receiving a Medal of Honor. I said, I know him. And she said, that's me as a young lady, young girl. So it's good to be here. I hope I'll get a chance to meet some of you. If somebody recognizes this old guy's face, come up and shake my hand. The memory's not quite so as good as it used to be. I think you'll say amen to that. Right back over.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I want to turn the mic over to Monty Halcomb, who
Microphone, please.
right.
Hold it parallel to the floor in front of your mouth and it'll work better.
Monty was, he was there, and I guess we've already introduced the 3 Blue Max pilots, and but he'll probably want to give you a little bit more history. I don't have much detailed history on this, and at that time, if someone has we have some time here before dinner, so if someone has a question or something, we can accommodate that, or comment about their experience with Blue Max. So I'll turn the key.
I'll hold the mic up.
Hold it parallel to the floor, this way, in front of your mouth. And they should.
You hold the mic any way you want. And Jim has already introduced the 3 Blue Max pilots that are with us. And they're sitting right here. If you really want to know what happened from a Blue Max perspective, please get with these gentlemen. And what they said was that anyone who asks them questions, they will buy you a round of drinks. And if you believe that, that's about as likely as Greg Simpson buying a round of drinks. Thank you, Mike. Teresa, we as the organization have decided to honor you. You are now an honorary member of the 15th Medical Battalion. And I'm sorry. The older I get, the more sissified I become. Anyway, thank you very much. And here's a challenge going for you. And you are now a lifetime member. Thank you. Thank you. I think now what we're going to do, we are going to read the list of names of the deceased 15th Medical Battalion members who died while on duty.
as most of you know, except for the Blue Max people who have been very lucky not to meet me before tonight. I'm
Good Lord.
First, you guys tell me to shut up, and then you tell me to talk. Most of you know me. I am the chaplain of this unit, which a lot of people are still trying to figure out how I ever got the chaplain's position. Tonight, we will do the missing man ceremony. If you look on your table, you have a handout there, and usually I explain it, but if you look at it, it will explain the ceremony. It's been around much longer than I have been, thank God. And the gentleman behind me is my former pilot, which is hard to believe from the size of his jacket today. He's going to read the names. This ceremony honors the troops that have given the full measure and have lived up to our motto, which so others will live, which we probably stole from another unit, but it works real good. I have been with you quite a few years, except for the Agent Orange when I don't make it. Fred here was my pilot in V1490169. The helicopter that you fly up at Peru, Indiana, was our bird. If you get a chance to get up there, we'd love to have you fly our bird again. If you look in it, they have little tags. One of them is for Trump, and the other one is for our pilot. When Fred got hit, Fred was honored and got to go back to wonderful Fort Polk, Louisiana. After he got out of the mental institution at Fort Polk, and if any of you have been to Fort Polk, you know what I'm talking about. My job, before they reopened the post, they gathered up a bunch of us at Fort Riley, sent us down there to run the alligators out from underneath the barracks. The United States Army figured they could tell Mom and Dad Bobby got shot by accident, but they didn't know how to tell Mom and Dad that Bobby got ate by an alligator coming out of the barracks for training. So they sent us down there and we ran the gators out. And then Fred there, who is from Louisiana, went back down there after he was wounded. The other pilot, unfortunately, was taken care of, came back to us in about a month or so after him and his crew were taken off, and the helicopter, according to the Army, had an accident. They blew up in the air, and we lost all of them. Fred and I are now the only two survivors of that crew. But we'd love to have you go up there and fly our bird again, if not for us, for Ronnie Trump and the other pilot. To tell you one more thing about Fred, I live in Kansas. He called me up this last year and asked me what that white stuff was around his flagpole. I had to tell him, up in Kansas, we call that snow. I guess they don't get much snow down in Louisiana. If you will read the booklets you have, you will find out what the ceremony means. I'm not exactly sure when it started, but I think it's one of the finest things that we do in memory of our people. Fred, you want to start reading the names? And if you look over the table here, the folks that set up the table did not know about it, so they set it in the corner. But if you look at the table and you look at your book, it will explain why everything on the table is there.
The names that are being read are the names of those who've gone before us. Valiant men. And we honor them. And we remember them each year. And we remember them in our hearts. The first name that we lost was Captain Charles Franklin Kane Jr. in 1965. Next, PFC Frank David Garrett, also in 1965. Warrant Officer George Warren Rice, 1965. PFC Rudolph Jack Mack, 1966. Captain Donald Coles Woodruff, 1966. Lieutenant Dennis Boyd Easley, 1968. Spec 5 Charles Samuel Rideout, 1966. Spec 4 Clifford Sherman Breacher, 1966. PFC Douglas Mason Kaiser, 1966. And we will have some individuals that are going to honor people that they know, that they served with, and they will call their names out.
Back for Ronald Trotman, 1967.
Jim? Jim? Sure.
Captain Kurt Lloyd Coombs, 1967. Warrant Officer Roger Clark Rose, 1967. Spec 4 Francis E. Glazebrook, Jr., 1967. Spec 4 Dalton Truro Golf, 1967. Spec 4 Larry Gay Lance, 1967.
Sure. Behind.
Spec 4 Norman Kent Dowd, 1968. Captain Armand Alvin Silvestri, 1968.
Warrant Officer 1 Thomas Carl Beals, 1968.
Spec 5, Johnny Glenn Gregg, 1968. Spec 4, John Stephen Ailing Jr., 1968. PFC Robert Ernest Jones, 1968. Warrant Officer James Donald Doran, 1968. First Lieutenant Stephen Carl Beals, 1968.
Spec 4 Kirk Allen Woolley, 1969. Is Dave Adams in? Yes.
I notice a thread of commonality that runs through everyone in this room and our absent friends. And that is that each and every one went above and beyond to live up to our words so that others may live. I'm going to go back and say a word about Kurt Woolley. He died trying to get a lieutenant who was tangled up in a tree in a Stokes harness, Stokes litter that was being rescued. And Woolley was in the tree with him trying to get him out. The helicopter lost its hover position, had to blow the cable, and Woolley and the lieutenant both were killed. He died trying to make sure that that lieutenant lived. 2 others that I feel went above and beyond. Spec 4 Gary Lynn Dubach, and Spec 4 Stephen Lawrence Schumacher. When 67174 went down, Gary Dubach exited the aircraft to set up a perimeter and went down. Stephen Schumacher, as a medic, saw Gary go down, exited the aircraft to help Gary, and he went down. I'm proud tonight to say that I made it without breaking down. I can seldom do that. But these men and the others we're reading, there's no doubt they all went above and beyond anything that they were asked to do.
Thank you. Spec 4 Evans Benbow, 1969. Spec 4 William Lee Brooks, 1969. Spec 4 Michael Raymond Wick, 1969.
Warrant Officer Jonathan R. Vars, 1969.
Spec 5 Lewis Scott DeBerry, 1969. Staff Sergeant Lester J. Brantley, 1969.
Staff Sergeant James Wood McGahee, 1969. Spec 5 Gary Lee Boulder, pardon me?
Gary Bowser.
Okay, 1969. Thank you, Smitty.
CW3 Furman Bobby Hodges, 1969.
Spec 5 Billy W. Denley, 1969. Spec 4 Ralph Silvo Shinoda, 1969. Spec 4 Ronald John Pikowski, 1969.
Private First Class Roosevelt George Dockery, 1970. Warrant Officer Rodney Keith Arnold, 1970. Spec 6 James Thaddeus Conway, 1970. Sergeant First Class James Harrison Brooks Jr., 1970. Spec 5 Gary Lynn Taylor, 1970.
Honda.
Spec 4 James Richard Quarterberry, 1970.
Spec 4 Samuel Taylor Owen, 1971.
This is a list of our
Warrant Officer Thomas Ronald Purcell, 1969. 19 years old. When he arrived in Vietnam, he was shot by a sniper 5 months later.
These are our legacy. These are men that gave their all, as John said. And we owe them all we can give them. They have given up their all for us. And if when you go home tonight, or go to your room, wherever you are going, pray for their families and their loved ones. They miss them. We know that. And he said, I came out of the crazy house. I was not wearing a skirt.
That's because my legs look better than his. I want to tell you, when we went up to Peru to fly that aircraft, that young man there, we went to get him out of the seat after he made his flight, and thank God we had 2 shoes